Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and I am having a very interesting morning. It seems that Mercury retrograde is visiting me early, so a lot of things are not working, so I may be talking into absolute cyberspace, and maybe the UFOs are listening. At any rate, Venus Unplugged, Psyche Says, Heartbreak Hotel. What we do here is explore all aspects of the archetype of Venus, of love, her wrath, her beauty, her terrifying presence in our life, and what has been going on, which seems to be kind of organic. It seems 2004 seems to be the story of the fairy tale and what it all means, because I've been on this jag for a while, and it seems I'm going to stay there. So what we're working with now is the Grimm's fairy tale of Cinderella, and it's called The Ash Girl. It's very different. It has a different pathology. And if you've been listening along here, fairy tales are about the structure of the collective unconscious. And so how does that work in our life? You know, fairy tales go throughout the world, and they have a basic structure. So with this particular tale, what we're dealing with is, and I'm starting to realize correlations, because there's also like 7 stages of alchemy, and this particular tale of Cinderella is, on a spiritual level, it's the descent of the soul. Guess who the soul is? It's Ash Girl, Cinderella. And their journey into life and what the soul goes through and transforms and everything. So what we're going to be dealing with right now is just the first kind of quarter, of this tale, which is generally, a girl's mother dies. Her father remarries a woman with 1 or 2 daughters. These are the general, because there's something like 670 versions of Cinderella. And the stepmother treats her poorly, confining her to the hearth and gives her impossible tasks. Sound familiar? I can't get out of this kitchen, or I can't get out of this office. I'm tied to this. All I do is stuff lentils. We know those feelings. And but the bones of fairy tales, see, they don't have any emotion in them. People die, nobody gets age, no facelifts, a couple of beautiful outfits, but nobody flips out when a frog starts talking to you, or a witch shows up. We in life, it'd be like, what? We'd spend 5 days in analysis, just like, wow, a frog talked to me. So what we're going to go over now is to look at one of the things that I find remarkable, particularly about Ash Girl, and many of the heroes or heroines, when they get hit with life, a disappointment, a betrayal, an impossible task that they have absolutely no skill at, nobody bitches. They just get on with it. So that is one of the things that I find so interesting about our beloved Ash Girl. She drops the drama. No drama. Starts realizing. And so what would that be like if in the stories, on the life stories that we create, all right, if it was like, just drop the drama. See what it is, and I'm absolutely deal with the issue. Feel the feelings. Know that that's going on, but just drop the storyline. Drop the drama. We all wonder and worry But we need to deal in a proactive way with whatever the task is that the bones of life are asking us. These are just the structures. And fairy tales indicate the pathology of structures. So, when there's too much drama going on inside of our heads, it's what begins to happen is we start to become, psychics, and we start to see, it's going to land this way, and then this is going to happen, and then fear and worry take over, and fear and worry are, one and the same. Fear always comes to prevent us from our anxiety. Like, holy moly, I don't really know how to deal with this. A natural angst that we have about the unknown. And then we start telling ourselves the whole, horrid view of how we think things should be. That's always a big one. Well, how could this be happening to me? I'm such a good person. Well, but that has nothing to do with the structures of life. Life's intention is to have you grow into your potential, into your fullness. And we spend a lot of time stuck in the drama instead of okay, I can give myself 10 minutes to carry on the worst case scenario, and then I got to get on what's really being presented here, all right? So we start telling ourselves this whole view. Oh my God, 3 people in the office got fired. I bet I'm next. I just read an article on unfaithful husbands, I'm sure, and boyfriends, lovers. I'm sure that's me. I'm sure my beloved is being unfaithful. Whatever we're telling ourselves, we're off and running. And then we get stuck in the resistance, because the resistance is the negative storyline, and we contribute to our stress and our bad feelings. But in fairy tales, nobody argues with the opposite or the shadow aspect. Her mother dies. She's got to deal with that loss, the Ash girl, and then the father remarries, so you got that rite of passage, and he remarries, a really cold-hearted, unloving woman with 2 wacko daughters. And gives her tasks that are humanly impossible. But Ash Girl, she doesn't flip out. She doesn't go into the drama. She sees what it's about. She accepts the opposites. That doesn't mean she becomes it. She knows, wow, this woman's a witch. But how can I use my positive witch within to outsmart her? So in fairy tales, usually the hero or the heroine will leave and go into the woods, the unknown place, the unconscious. They begin a process. You realize, oh, dang, man, this blows. That's the point that you're entering some unknown possibility. You're in a process. But we get caught up in telling ourselves the terrible story, and then we fear, and then we're freaked out, and we really go into that one. And we don't realize, hey, I can observe this, and I can actually outsmart this, as in this case, Ash Girl does. Something in her just gets on. She does the task. She sorts and she learns until it's time for things to change. So when we're given a task, observe the resistance to get on with the task. It doesn't matter whether it's fair or unfair. What matters is you're being presented with the task. And to do a task, especially a bitter task, with a sense of the sacred, you're going to come out with gold. And a sense of the sacred is whatever you got to do next, you do with all of your heart. All right? So in fairy tales, there's no projecting, nor predicting, and no promise of past or future okay? It's all in the now. So we as humans, we suffer from our rigidity. We look at things and how they should be, and then we hold on tight of how it could be, coulda, woulda, shoulda, and spend a whole day, sometimes lifetimes, on the path of projection. But the path of projection is a sorrowful path. So when we start to understand the structure of fairy tales as the way that the collective unconscious is structured, we can start to see, oh, well, we're going to have to do the task because it's going to come 3 times. And we can look at that in terms of astrology. Saturn's going to strike us 3 times. We usually have 3 Mercury retrogrades a year. 3 is always that holy number. And so whether it's fair or unfair, what's the secret that's being held within the task that everybody else who's refusing to do it doesn't learn? Okay, and then there comes a certain acceptance. And in the moment of acceptance, that's when we can start having an experience of clarity, just a hint. We accept the condition. Okay, today I have to accept the condition that I have no idea whether this is being recorded or not. I think whatever's happening with my website or theirs. And I just had to accept it. Where was I going to go? I'm just going to keep calm and move on because I want to share this. So, as I said, wherever this is going, that's where it's going to land. But that's my task, my ash task, okay? So with the acceptance, it's like I don't have a lot of laws because that could just make you worry because there's so many things to break. But I have kind of a principle. And the way that my morning starts, pretty much that's going to be the weather for today. So today I started with an intense dream that I was in an absolute dream state for 2 hours. Even while writing it down, I had no idea what I was up to, except that I knew that was my task to write it down. I'll read it in a couple of days and be floored. That's usually the way. And now I'm having this experience with technology. So it's like, oh, I get it. This is an early visitation of Mercury retrograde. I'm seeing how I think the day should go, but it's not going to. So I'm going to pack a lunch and move on into the day and just observe all the things that can go wrong and my response to them. So I'm not going to give up. But see, when we begin to accept things, we get a clearer vision, and we're not giving up for our own or my own bad behavior, which my bad behavior would be like, well, I was planning to do this, and I don't know, and then what's going to happen? All those are still there, but here I am still talking. So with this acceptance, there's a decision, there's a moment that allows us to change our attitude and our direction and our beliefs. And then we can move towards clearer or clarity or make some sound decisions. My sound decision, life is awesome and I'm not missing the party, even if it is chaos. So what I want to look at is the hearth. All right, so Cinderella, in all the Cinderella stories, it's the hearth. What is the hearth? Now, the hearth is, it's a fire. It's the center of the house. The Vestal virgins tended to the fire. In ancient times, when we would wed, we would take the fire from the mother's house or the family's house and then bring it to the new bride's and groom's house. The goddess Hestia comes in the form of the flame. She is the wise one. She's the one that makes a hearth a home. But there's a few other things. So like Ash Girl, she was kind of like living in this kind of perfect happiness, bliss, beautiful surroundings, her father and her mother, until her mother dies, and her father remarries and introduces the cruel stepmother. So what does this symbolize? It symbolizes paradise lost, the descent of the soul into the world of suffering, into the world of toil and sorrow, why we have to tend to this lowly hearth brings the symbolism of the ashes of the dead, of humiliation and sorrow. I think most people, particularly when you're aware of your loneliness, we pin it on our surroundings, but I think there is an intrinsic, or I know for myself, there is an intrinsic, unbearable loneliness that has nothing to do with this earth plane. It's as if I hold a memory of from where I came from, my point of origin. And I struggled with it for many, many years, thinking maybe it was love or accomplishment or art. But no, it's a special place of sorrow in my heart. And I know it's a longing to go home, phone home, where my soul really belongs. But in the meanwhile, I have the tasks of life and evolution and sharing. It's so important. I mean, what's the sense of going through all this shit if you're not going to share it? I don't even know whether it's about preventing others, because that we don't have the right. That's interfering in their karma. But we can tell the story, and if they want to take the hint, voila, they took the hint. And what happens is we still have to do the task, but they up the version of the task. And so we learn on a different level. That's why things get so, why is it going to happen to me again? It's because you have to learn the new, improved version. And as long as we think or say to ourselves or our friends or whatever, or write on our blogs, this should have never happened, or I know this. Well, guess what? If it's in your life, you don't know it on that level. You can't out-create the divine. And that's what rocks. It's infinite possibilities. And we're all part of it. So when the soul descends into the earth, this place of suffering and toil and sorrow, and then we're with the lowly hearth brings the symbol of the ashes of the dead, of humiliation and sorrow. So here in the German tale, the Grimm's tale of Cinderella, Ash Fool or Ash Girl, they're actually more symbolically correct, because it was an ancient custom for the unhappy to sit amongst the ashes. As Odysseus seated himself humbly in the ashes when speaking to the Holy One, until he was invited to a higher place. Ashes also symbolize the transitions anew in life. But Ash Fool or Ash Girl or Cinderella's place by the hearth is highly significant in another respect. To sit by the hearth is to take up a position in the interior spiritual center. The hearth has also been a place, a stand, a sacred center, the place of transference from spirit by fire. It is the inner world of the soul's experience. Once again, sounds of alchemy, hints. It is a place of communication with the dead. Well, so it could be our dead thoughts or our spirit guides, or they're dead, but yet alive. Once again, that opposite paradox. And as the hearthstone covers the entrance to the underworld, It is also a place of safety from spirits wandering outside at night. In Celtic rites, the cult of the dead centered on the hearth. In Scotland, so significant was the hearth at the center that no tenant could be evicted before the fire was extinguished. In northern England, the entire hearthstone was the fire burning on it, and it was often removed to a new home. The hearth is also a place of feminine domination, from which comes the warmth, the food, and the comfort. Food was left there during festivals of the dead, and in fairy tales, brownies and lutins also haunt the hearth, where the food is left for them in gratitude for household tasks performed by them. We also leave cookies and milk by the chimney, which doesn't have a fire going, Santa Claus. So this is very much in our everyday culture, okay? So Ash Girl's positioned by the heart, and as a tender, and as the fire associates Cinderella with the Vessel versions and with Hestia. That is spelled Hestia. She's the most glorious of the archetypes. She just, when you can't get anything done, call on Hestia. She helps you go from one task to the next with none of that kind of chaos and that anxiety and the witch within saying, you got to do it perfectly. You got to get it done now. Hestia blows her off and just says, no, come with me. I'll show you. She's also associated with the Roman Lar, goddess Lar, L-A-R, and the house spirit who had the hearth at his shrine. And the dead were buried under the hearth to the entrance to the underworld. So it is significant in connection with Cinderella's many skin disguises in the variants that Lar is sometimes depicted as clothed in dog skins. So Lar is another god. And tending the fire, Cinderella is the spirit, the soul, the beautiful one, or the two stepsisters, our body and mind. Together, the three sisters represents the three stages of evolution of man's understanding, from merely the body and sensual response to the mental powers and onto the soul. Individual self-consciousness, integration, and enlightenment. So, if you wish, there's a marvelous book. It's called Fairy Tales, Allegories of Inner Life by J.C. Cooper. And that book is about, which I just read from, is about archetypal patterns and symbols in classic fairy tales. I mean, you could spend your life working just on one fairy tale, particularly if it mirrors your individuation pattern. So, but it is universal in having these tasks. So here, it is also, what is the symbol of the ugly sisters and the stepmother motif? So the sisters, often called the ugly sisters, are not always represented as physically ugly. In some versions, they are outwardly good-looking, but have an inward mental and moral ugliness. In Ash Girl, they are fair of face, but foul of heart, and depict the dark and evil powers latent in unkindliness, manifesting in cruelty, in greed, in envy, vanity, and sheer stupidity. All right, and the stepmother is the dark, destructive aspect of the feminine principle. Remember, the mother is life-giving and death-giving, which is also typified by the witch or the bad fairy. So these stepmothers, okay, they symbolize, once again, the loss of paradise, the harsh realities of the world, and the phenomenon in which one confronts this dark side of the Great Mother. So in some versions, Cinderella's mother plays a vital role, but in Ash Girl, she doesn't. In Ash Girl, she dies, and what happens is, through some inspiration, Ash Girl gets this idea. Her father is going off to 3 days at the fair, 72 hours, which is always a completion. I even have that on my answering machine. Actually, I don't know if I have it anymore. If I don't get back to you in 72 hours, call again. Why? Because 72 is the number 9, and 9 is the completion. So for some reason, I don't get to that. There is this completion cycle, so we're going to be on a completely new level. Or sometimes people will call in a great state of anxiety. But with it, and of course I always pray immediately and send good energy, even if somebody just leaves a message. And if I don't get back in 72 hours, I know there's been a shift or a clarity or something. So I'm not really leaving anybody hanging. I'm just leaving somebody in the state of I know something sacred is going on. So if they get the answer too quickly, that's an interference. Remember in fairy tales, there's no time. We don't know what year or what century. Same things with prayer or healing or miracles. They just show up. And who's to say that our prayers aren't answered centuries later? We're born with a talent. Maybe that's something we never got in a previous incarnation or a previous existence, and we show up with it in this life. Who's to say? Time is funny that way. So in these tales, with these kind of primitive mothers, are just as true today as they were whenever once upon a time was and is. You see, it is, and sometimes the cruel stepmother is the one, through their cruelty. I certainly have had that in my life. Someone that is being cruel, or I have to do a task I really don't want to do, but I'm learning something. And while I'm busy learning and muttering to myself, but doing the task nonetheless, nobody says you can't bitch, although it's just a waste of time, I'm learning something. And in the task that I'm being given, I'm learning how to get myself out of this situation. No drama queen. Do the task. It's a pause. And doing the task comes some clarity. And in the clarity comes the insight. Because the anxiety and the worry and the how it shoulda, woulda, and could have been has time to subside. And out of all of that, out of giving up resistance, out of finally being truly on your knees, which means becoming humble, voila, we get an insight. So that's part of what's going on with being in the ashes. Did you have any idea that that's what ashes meant? And that's the really cool part of fairy tales. So as I said, I have no idea whether this is, whether it's been recorded, but if it is, you send me a line. Nice to know. I won't be able to put it up on Facebook. But next week we will continue with Ash Girl and the Ash Girl within. So do the task, give up the drama, really see you stand on sacred ground and you're in a state of the miraculous. Worry and fear are stopping you from seeing that. Be with that. And till next week. Ta-ta!
You're going to kill the love of my life.
Casey!
If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous.
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.